Okay, so I'm gonna start over. Like I said, I'm not here today as your sub, so I'm not trying to make you quiet, although I would appreciate listening for a few minutes. I'm gonna try not to be too long. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about my son Ryan. How many of you knew who he was? Okay, more in this class, I think, than that class. So I'm gonna pass around this little card. I had made these up right soon after he died. Show some pictures of him, and you can just pass them around. Now, he took his life almost a year ago, last May. He had he graduated here from 2014. He finished 2 semesters of JSU, had good grades, had a job, lived on his own. His life seemed perfect. But what his main problem was, he suffered from depression. How many of you have heard that word before? Okay. How many of you know someone who suffers from depression? All right. Anyone, raise your hand if you have depression. Okay, one person raises their hand. I bet there's more than that in here. But why do you think people are leery of letting people know they are depressed? There's kind of a stigma in our world that people don't think it's real, or that it makes you less of a person, or I don't know what why there's a stigma on that. But how many of you, raise your hand if you think that depression is real? Okay, raise your hand if you think depression is curable. Okay, it's actually not curable. It's treatable. What does that mean? What's the difference between treatable and curable?
Because curable means it can go away, but treatable means you can
They just
take
increase it.
medicine
Right.
and try to heal it.
The kind of depression Ryan had was a chronic depression. It runs in our family. I have it. My mom has it. Not all my kids have it. Jesse has it. But Jake and Molly don't. I'm glad they don't. Ryan, I think, had it worse than I do, or my mom. I grew up with it, so I thought I knew about depression. I never really investigated it or researched more about depression or even suicide. I always knew that was a possibility with Ryan. But I guess in my mind, I never thought he'd really do it. But he talked about it all his life, from the time he was 6 years old. And, we took him and went to the doctor, got medicine, we're doing good. But guys especially get to a point where they don't want to be on medicine. They don't, he didn't want to take medicine the rest of his life. He wouldn't take it once he got into high school. And, things were doing okay. But he had a friend named Sam. How many of you knew Sam Tompkins? Okay, he graduated a year before Ryan. And he also had depression. That's something that they had in common. It's something I think they talked about together and worked through. But when Sam left, Ryan didn't ever talk about it. He we got him back on medicine. He did agree to do that, and I thought we were good. But we weren't. He wasn't talking about it to anybody, not his best friends, not his girlfriend. And I think it just ate him up that whole time, because if you don't talk about things, what happens? It builds up. Yeah. And going back to depression, how many of you think that someone that is depressed, raise your hand if you think someone depressed is always sad? Okay, they aren't. Look at those pictures of Ryan. Does he look sad in any of them? He doesn't. He was, and when you saw Sam, if you ever heard of Sam, he was always smiling, always happy. But what does that tell you about our society? What do we show to the world?
We show that we're okay when we're okay.
Yeah. But how many of us are really okay all the time? Nobody is. We all have things. We don't know where people come from at home, what kind of home life they have, and their life could be perfect. And they still deal with these thoughts that they're not good enough, or that the only way out is to leave the world. And that's where Ryan was. And the reason I'm here is I want to tell you there's other options. There's ways that you can help that. How many of you think, depression isn't curable? What about suicide? Do you think suicide is really preventable? I think it is too, and that's the reason I'm giving my time to talk to you guys, to give you some tools to help you through times when it gets too hard. Depression, how many of you think depression is a real illness? Like cancer, diabetes, asthma, those kind of things. You think it's real? Hey, some of you are kind of, I don't know, and that's kind of how the world views it. But if you went to the doctor and they told you, okay, you've got asthma, you need to do this inhaler every week or every day or whatever, would you do it? Or would you just suffer through not being able to breathe very well? Or if you had cancer, would you do something to kind of get better?
Yes,
Okay, so why do you think people don't want to do something about depression?
that is personal.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very personal. It's very personal. And guys especially don't like to talk. Now, we know girls like to talk, right? No? Girls don't like to talk? Well, it's easier for girls to talk, I think, sometimes with the girlfriends and things like that, but guys don't talk as much. And that's, that's what makes it hard when you keep things in. But depression is treatable, and that is the main thing. And there's nothing wrong with having depression. There's nothing wrong with having those thoughts of suicide. But what's wrong is when you act on them. Okay, that's not a normal reaction to just normal teenage stuff or life stuff, not just teenage stuff. You can get through it, but the point is you've got to make a choice to. After Sam died, it's like I said, I got right on medicine. I thought we were doing good. And when he started talking about wanting to take his life, I said, well, don't you remember how horrible it was and how devastating it was when Sam died? And he said, yeah, for a moment. That's all he saw, that people grieve for just a minute. And then they're fine. They move on, they go through their life, and they're fine. But is that really what happens? And it was so ironic that he couldn't see that we don't necessarily show our grief. You do it at a funeral and, after that for a while, but then you just move on. But you're still grieving. You'll grieve all the time, but you do it where? In private. In your room, in the shower, anywhere not to show to other people. And I think in a way he thought that, okay, my family's going to be better off without me. But that's never true. It doesn't matter what you do. You could fail out of school, you can get pregnant as a teenager, go to jail for something, stealing, or anything. You could do anything, and that would not matter or make it easier for your family for you not to be here. Now, your parents are going to be pissed about all those kind of things, and they're going to be mad, but that doesn't mean that they would be better off without you or the troubles that maybe your behavior or things caused. Ryan was not perfect. He made a lot of bad choices, but he had a lot of good things going for him too. But depression is really funny. How many of you have ever seen the movie, the Hunger Games series? Okay. The last one where Peter was brainwashed, when he came back, he couldn't tell reality from what was real and what wasn't real. That's kind of how depression hits you. It lies to you. The depression alters your perception. You think of things, what you think is not necessarily real or true. And that's the hardest thing. He couldn't get out of, he couldn't realize, okay, what is real? Even years later, he had to ask, is this real or is it false or whatever? And with depression, that's kind of what it does to you. And that's what is so hard. Ryan had a ton of friends, but those last several months, to ask him, he had no friends. It's hard to understand how someone can have that darkness and not see that you have people around you that care. Parents, brothers, sisters. How can they not see that if you die, that they're not going to be hurt, or something's not going to be, wrong for the rest of their lives. I mean, some people say it's so selfish for them to do that. But in their mind, they are just, and it's just hard to explain, they just can't see past their own pain. But what happens to their pain once they die is they're giving it to everybody else. And if you can realize that when you're in a good place and know that suicide is not an answer, it may end that person's pain, but it gives it to everybody else. Brothers, sisters, grandparents, parents, friends, and even people who are not, that just knew him. I mean, it affects so many people. He probably didn't know how many lives he's touched, but we found out after he died, the people that were affected by his death. But what you have to remember is that there is nothing wrong with having depression. There is nothing wrong with not being okay. Even if it's something that's little or something that's huge, you need to find a way to talk to somebody, reach out to somebody, and get help. One of the things I have over here is a little tattoo. It's a big tattoo, actually. Semicolon. Has anyone seen that project, Semicolon Project? Okay. Anybody want to tell about it? What does it mean? Okay. What it is a semicolon, if you're writing a story or writing a book or something like that, and you could end a sentence, but you decide to keep it going, you can use a semicolon, and it connects the two thoughts